The cream-colored envelope felt like lead in my hands. Gold foil accents caught the morning light streaming through my apartment windows, mocking me with their cheerful sparkle. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside, the wedding invitation I'd been dreading for months. My name is Monica, and my brother was about to marry my best friend. Or rather, my former best friend. "You've been staring at that thing for 10 minutes, Sullivan said from my kitchen counter, where he was nursing his second cup of coffee. "Want me to open it for you?" I shook my head, finally sliding my finger under the flap. The invitation was exactly as pretentious as I'd expected. Thick cardstock, elaborate calligraphy, and a photo of the happy couple gazing lovingly into each other's eyes. "Well," Sullivan prompted, "you are cordially invited to celebrate the union of Riker and Jolie," I read aloud, my voice flat. "God, I think I'm going to be sick." "You don't have to go," Sullivan said, but we both knew that wasn't true. I dropped onto my couch, letting the invitation fall to the floor. If I don't show up, they win. They get to paint me as the bitter, jealous sister who couldn't handle their perfect love story. I made air quotes with my fingers, feeling childish but too angry to care. My phone buzzed. Speaking of the devil, it was my mother. "Did you get it?" she asked, not bothering with hello. "Isn't it beautiful? Jolie picked out the design herself." "Of course she did," I muttered. "Yes, Mom, I got it." "Now, honey, I know this is complicated, but your brother is happy. Can't you just be happy for him?" I closed my eyes, counting to 10. "Mom, Jolie was my best friend since middle school. She spent every Christmas with us for a decade. And suddenly, 6 months ago, they announced they're dating. Don't you think that's weird?" "Sometimes love just happens that way," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "Oh, did you see the note about the family meeting tomorrow night? Your father insists everyone attend. It's about the estate planning." My stomach dropped. "Estate planning? Why now?" "Well, with Riker getting married, your father wants to make sure everything's properly arranged. You'll be there, right?" I caught Sullivan's eye across the room. He'd heard enough of my conversations with my mother to know that tone, the one that said this wasn't really a request. "I'll be there," I said, hanging up before she could say more. Sullivan crossed the room and picked up the invitation, studying it. "You think this is about the inheritance? When isn't it?" I grabbed my laptop, pulling up my bank account. The numbers hadn't changed. My teaching salary wasn't going to magically transform into the kind of money Riker and Jolie were after. My grandmother's estate is worth millions, and now suddenly my golden boy brother is marrying my best friend, right when Dad's talking about estate planning. That's not a coincidence. My phone buzzed again, a text from my grandmother, Rosalind. "Come see me before the family meeting tomorrow. Bring coffee, the good kind." I showed Sullivan the message. He raised an eyebrow. "Your grandmother's the sharp one, right? The one who never bought into Riker's act?" "That's her." I felt a small spark of hope for the first time since the invitation arrived. She sees right through him, always has. Then maybe she knows something about what they're planning. I stood up, gathering my keys and bag. "Only one way to find out. Want to grab dinner later? I have a feeling I'm going to need a drink after tomorrow's meeting." "Count me in," Sullivan said, heading for the door. At the threshold, he paused. "Hey, Monica, whatever they're planning, you're stronger than they think. Don't forget that." After he left, I picked up the invitation again, running my finger over the embossed names. Riker and Jolie, my brother and my best friend, who'd spent years listening to my secrets, my hopes, my fears, probably laughing about them the whole time. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Jolie. "Hope you got the invitation. Can't wait to officially be sisters." I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my safe and pulled out the last birthday card Jolie had given me, just 6 months before she and Riker announced their relationship. "Best friends forever," she'd written. "No secrets between us." I placed the wedding invitation next to the birthday card, a physical reminder of their betrayal. Tomorrow, I'd see my grandmother and find out what she knew. But tonight, I had research to do. If they thought I was going to sit quietly while they manipulated my family, and tried to cut me out of my inheritance, they were about to learn how wrong they were. The church bells chimed as I slipped into the back pew, 30 minutes early for the ceremony. My grandmother's words from our morning coffee meeting still echoed in my mind. "Watch everything, dear, especially what they think no one's seeing." I smoothed my navy blue dress, definitely not the pale pink bridesmaid gown Jolie had forgotten to ask me to wear, and observed the pre-wedding chaos. "Monica," my mother's voice cut through the murmur of arriving guests. "Why aren't you helping Jolie get ready? All her bridesmaids are upstairs." "Funny, I must have missed that invitation too," I said, keeping my voice light. "Besides, I thought the bride preferred to keep some distance between us these days." Mom's face tightened. "Don't start. Not today." "Everything okay here?" Riker appeared beside us, looking perfect in his tuxedo, always the concerned brother in public. "Just fine," I said, meeting his eyes, congratulating my dear brother on his unexpected romance. Riker's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "Life's full of surprises, sis. Speaking of which, Dad wants to talk to you after the reception about yesterday's meeting." "The meeting you and Jolie conveniently scheduled during my teaching hours?" I raised an eyebrow. "How did that go?" "Wonderfully," he said, his voice dripping with fake warmth. "We made some important decisions about the family trust. Dad's really thinking about the future." Before I could respond, the wedding coordinator hustled everyone to their places. I watched from my seat as Riker took his position at the altar, the perfect picture of a loving groom. The bridal march began, and Jolie appeared in a dress that probably cost more than my yearly salary. As she passed my pew, our eyes met briefly. Something flickered across her face. Guilt, fear, before she quickly looked away. During the ceremony, I noticed Jolie's hand trembling as she recited her vows. Interesting. The confident Jolie I knew never showed nervousness. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick note. "Bride nervous. Why?" The reception was held in the grand ballroom of the Harvey Hotel, my family's flagship property. I found a quiet corner to observe the festivities, noting how Jolie worked the room, charming every wealthy guest in attendance. "Quite the performance, isn't it?" I turned to find Sullivan beside me, offering a glass of champagne. "You made it," I said, grateful for his steady presence. "Couldn't let you face the lions alone." He nodded toward where Jolie was laughing with my father. "Notice how she keeps touching her neck. Classic tell when she's lying." "You picked up on that too?" I took a sip of champagne. She used to do that during our college presentations. "Monica." Jolie's voice made me freeze. She stood behind us, her wedding dress rustling. "Can we talk? Privately?" Sullivan squeezed my arm before walking away. I followed Jolie to a quiet hallway, away from the reception's noise. "You look beautiful," she said, fidgeting with her necklace again. "I really did mean to ask you to be a bridesmaid." "Save it," I cut her off. "What do you want?" She glanced around nervously. "I need you to know this isn't what you think." "Oh, so you didn't secretly date my brother while being my best friend? You didn't help him convince Dad to restructure the trust in your favor yesterday?" Her face paled. "How did you know about the meeting? Grandmother told me everything this morning, including how you suggested removing my voting rights from the family business." "Riker said it was for the best," she whispered. "The company needs strong leadership, and you've never shown interest, because Riker blocked every attempt I made to get involved." I stepped closer. "Tell me something, Jolie. Was any of it real? Our friendship? Or was I just your ticket into the Harvey fortune all along?" Tears welled in her eyes. "It's not that simple. There are things you don't know." "There you are," Riker's voice boomed down the hallway. "Everyone's waiting for the first dance." As he led Jolie away, she looked back at me, her expression desperate. "Monica, please, be careful." "Come on, honey," Riker said firmly, cutting her off. I watched them return to the reception, my mind racing. Jolie was scared, not of me, but of something else. Or someone else. My phone buzzed with a text from my grandmother. "Meet me in my office. Now, bring that sharp friend of yours." I found Sullivan and showed him the message. He grinned. Ready to crash this party? More than ready, I said, heading for the elevator. I think Grandma's about to show us her cards. Grandmother's office on the top floor of the Harvey Hotel was a time capsule of old money and power. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound books, and a massive desk that had witnessed decades of family decisions. She sat behind it now, looking more alert than I'd seen her in years. Lock the door, she instructed as Sullivan and I entered. What I'm about to show you can't leave this room. I turned the lock while Sullivan took a seat. Grandmother pulled out a thick manila envelope from her desk drawer. Your brother made a mistake, she said, her voice sharp. He thought I was sleeping during yesterday's meeting. I wasn't. She spread several documents across the desk. Look here. These are the original trust documents, drawn up by your grandfather 30 years ago. And these, she pulled out another set of papers, are the changes Riker and your father tried to push through yesterday. Sullivan leaned forward, scanning the papers. They're trying to consolidate voting power. Worse, I said, pointing to a highlighted section. They're trying to make it so only married family members can hold controlling shares. That's why the wedding was rushed. Grandmother nodded. Precisely. But your brother got sloppy. Notice anything about these signatures? I examined the papers closely, then gasped. These are dated 3 months ago, but Dad's signature looks different from his current one. Because your father broke his writing hand 2 months ago, Grandmother said, smiling grimly. He couldn't have signed these then. They forged his signature. Sullivan whistled low. That's not just unethical, that's illegal. Indeed. Grandmother pulled out one final document, which is why I had my lawyers draw this up last week. It's an amendment to the trust that supersedes anything your brother tried to do. It guarantees equal shares to both my grandchildren, regardless of marital status. Does Dad know about this? I asked. Not yet. I'm saving that for the reception. She checked her elegant watch. In about an hour, actually. A knock at the door made us all jump. Mother? It was Dad. Are you in there? The photographer wants family photos. Grandmother quickly gathered the documents. Just a moment, dear. She turned to me, her voice low. Monica, I need you to take these to my lawyer's office tonight. Thomas is expecting you. Don't let anyone see you leave. What about the photos? I asked. Oh, I think we can spare you from those, she said with a wink. Sullivan, would you mind creating a small distraction in about 10 minutes? Something to draw attention away from the service elevator. Sullivan grinned. I think I can manage that. We waited until Dad's footsteps faded before opening the door. Grandmother grabbed my arm as I passed. One more thing. That friend of yours, Jolie, she came to see me last week, alone. Said she had something to tell me about Riker, but he interrupted before she could. Watch her carefully. I think she's having second thoughts. I nodded, tucking the envelope into my purse. Why are you helping me like this? Her eyes softened. Because you remind me of myself at your age, and because I've watched Riker manipulate this family for too long. It's time someone stood up to him. Back at the reception, I positioned myself near the service elevator while Sullivan made his way to the dessert table. Right on cue, there was a crash, followed by Sullivan's theatrical apology as the massive wedding cake toppled over. The crowd gasped and surged toward the commotion. I slipped into the elevator unnoticed, my heart pounding. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Jolie watching me from across the room. She gave me the smallest of nods before turning away. The law office was only 3 blocks away. I hurried through the darkening streets, clutching my purse tight. A text from Sullivan lit up my phone. Kate crisis contained. Riker furious. Your grandmother is amazing. She suggested everyone take a break for coffee while they clean up. You've got at least 30 minutes. Thomas, my grandmother's lawyer, was waiting at the door. Right on time, he said, ushering me inside. Let's get these filed before your brother realizes what's happening. As Thomas processed the documents, I thought about Jolie's earlier warning and her conversation with my grandmother. There was more going on here than just the trust. My phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. Meet me in the hotel garden after the reception. Come alone. I'll tell you everything. Jay, I showed the message to Thomas. Should I go? He finished stamping the last document. These are officially filed now. Whatever your brother was planning, he can't touch your inheritance anymore. He handed me a copy. I'd say you're in a strong position to hear what she has to say. I headed back to the hotel, the weight of the documents replaced by a new tension. In an hour, my grandmother would reveal everything to the family. But first, I had a garden meeting to attend, and something told me Jolie's secrets could change everything. I slipped back into the reception just as the staff finished cleaning up the cake disaster. Sullivan appeared at my side, pressing a fresh glass of champagne into my hand. Mission accomplished, he whispered. Documents are safe with Thomas, I confirmed, but we're not done yet. Look at this. I showed him Jolie's text. Could be a trap, he said, frowning. Or she could finally be ready to talk. I watched Jolie across the room, noting how Riker hadn't left her side since I'd returned. His hand rested on her lower back, but it looked less like affection and more like control. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ's voice boomed through the speakers. The happy couple would like to thank everyone for their patience during our little mishap. And now, it's time for the father-daughter dance. I used the distraction to make my way closer to where Riker stood with our parents. He was speaking in low, urgent tones. Can't find the original documents anywhere, I caught him saying, and grandmother's being impossible. Quiet, Dad hissed, spotting me. Monica, come join us, sweetheart. Actually, Mum cut in, Riker was just telling us about your behavior earlier. Really, Monica, confronting the bride like that? Interesting, I said, locking eyes with my brother. What exactly did Jolie tell you about our conversation? Riker's jaw tightened. She said you were making accusations, trying to ruin her special day. Did she mention what those accusations were about? Before he could answer, grandmother's voice rang out behind us. Milton, dear, could you help me with something in my office? Bring Riker, too. Now, Riker protested, we're in the middle of... Now. Grandmother's tone left no room for argument. As they left, I noticed Jolie slipping through the French doors to the garden. Perfect timing. I waited 30 seconds, then followed. The garden was lit by strings of fairy lights, casting soft shadows among the roses. Jolie stood by the fountain, still in her wedding dress, but looking smaller somehow, more like the girl I used to know. You came, she said, wringing her hands. I wasn't sure you would. Start talking. I never wanted any of this, she burst out. The wedding, the trust, none of it. Riker, he has something on me. On my family. What do you mean? My father's company was failing. Riker offered to help, said he'd invest and save us from bankruptcy. But then he started asking for favors. Small things at first, then bigger ones. She wiped at her eyes. Before I knew it, he owned us. He said if I didn't go along with his plan, he'd destroy everything my father built, and marrying him was part of the plan. He needed a wife to secure his position in the trust. Said it had to be someone he could trust to vote his way. She laughed bitterly. Who better than his sister's best friend? Someone who already knew the family. My phone buzzed, a text from Sullivan. Your brother just stormed out of your grandmother's office. He looks ready to kill someone. Get back inside now. Jolie, I said urgently, I need you to be very clear. Are you saying Riker blackmailed you into marriage? There's more, she whispered. I found something in his office last week. Documents about... There you are. Riker's voice cut through the night like a knife. He strode toward us, his face twisted with rage. Having a nice chat? Riker, please, Jolie started. Shut up, he snapped. Both of you get back inside, now. Or what? I challenged, stepping between him and Jolie. Going to threaten us like you threatened her family? His eyes widened, then narrowed dangerously. You have no idea what you're talking about. But if you want to play games, little sister, remember, I always win. Not this time. Grandmother emerged from the shadows, followed by Dad and Sullivan. I heard everything, Riker, and so did your father. Dad looked shattered. Son, is this true? Did you blackmail this girl? Of course not, Riker protested. They're lying, trying to turn you against me. That's enough. Grandmother's voice was steel. Milton, I believe it's time for that announcement I mentioned. And Riker, you might want to call your lawyer. As they led Riker back inside, Sullivan caught my arm. You okay? I watched Jolie sink onto a bench, her wedding dress pooling around her like broken dreams. I will be. But first, I need to help an old friend. The garden fell quiet, except for the splash of the fountain and Jolie's soft sobs. I sat beside her, remembering all our shared secrets, all our promises to always be there for each other. Come on, I said gently. Let's get you out of that dress. We have a lot to talk about. The morning after the wedding, I sat in my grandmother's study surrounded by boxes of old family documents. Jolie was asleep in one of the hotel's suites upstairs, finally peaceful after crying herself to sleep. Sullivan had brought us coffee and pastries before heading to work, promising to return later. Look at this, Grandmother said, sliding a folder across the desk. Bank statements from 3 years ago. Notice anything strange? I scanned the papers, my eyes catching on a series of transfers. These are all going to offshore accounts. Exactly, and look who authorized them. Riker. I sat back, pieces clicking into place. He's been embezzling from the family business. Not just embezzling. Jolie's voice made us both jump. She stood in the doorway, wearing borrowed clothes, her face pale but determined. He's been running a whole shadow operation. That's what I found in his office. Grandmother gestured for her to join us. Tell us everything. It started with small things, Jolie said, sinking into a chair. Using company resources for personal projects. Then he began creating fake subsidiaries, channeling money through them. When my father's company did their audit last year, he found discrepancies. That's when Riker stepped in with his help. And threatened to implicate your father if you didn't cooperate. I finished. Jolie nodded. But last week I found more. He's been falsifying environmental reports for the hotel renovations, cutting corners, using banned materials. If this gets out, it could destroy the company's reputation. A knock at the door interrupted us. Sullivan entered, looking grim. You need to see this, he said, holding up his phone. On the screen was a news article. Harvey Hotel's CEO's son arrested on fraud charges. It's starting, Grandmother said, reaching for her phone as it began to ring. Milton, yes, I've seen it. No, stay where you are. We'll handle this. I pulled up the article on my laptop. Multiple sources claim investigation ongoing. Holy shit, they're saying he's been running this scheme for years. There's more, Jolie said quietly. She pulled a USB drive from her pocket. I copied his files before the wedding. Everything's here. The fake companies, the bribes, all of it. I was going to turn it over to the authorities, but I was scared. You're doing it now, I said firmly. That's what matters. Grandmother hung up the phone. The press will be here soon. Monica, take Jolie to Thomas's office. He'll know how to handle this legally. Sullivan, help me gather these documents. We need to prove we had no knowledge of Riker's activities. As if on cue, my phone lit up with Riker's number. I answered on speaker. You think you've won? His voice was cold, controlled. This is just the beginning, sister dear. I'm not going down alone. Actually, I said, you are. We have everything, Riker. The offshore accounts, the fake subsidiaries, the environmental cover-ups. Jolie gave us the files. Silence, then a harsh laugh. You're bluffing. Want to bet your future on that? I glanced at Jolie, who nodded encouragingly. Turn yourself in, Riker. Make it easier on everyone. You're going to regret this, he snarled, then hung up. He'll try something, Sullivan warned. Let him, Grandmother said, her voice hard. We have the truth on our side now. We spent the next hour organizing documents and making copies. Jolie's hand shook as she wrote out her statement, but her words were clear and damning. Sullivan fielded calls from reporters, while Grandmother coordinated with the company's PR team. I never thought it would end like this, Jolie said quietly. as we prepared to leave for the lawyer's office. "I'm so sorry, Monica, for everything." I studied her face, the face of my oldest friend, worn down by months of fear and guilt. "We'll get through this. Together this time." My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Coming to the office. Need to talk to you both." "Ready?" I asked Jolie. She squared her shoulders. "Ready." As we rode the elevator down, I thought about how quickly life could change. Yesterday, I'd watched my brother marry my best friend in what I thought was the ultimate betrayal. Today, we were exposing his crimes and rebuilding broken trust. The lobby was already filling with reporters. Sullivan appeared at my side, creating a path through the crowd. "Cars waiting out back," he murmured. "Your grandmother's handling the press." Through the glass doors, I could see camera flashes and microphones. Somewhere in the city, my brother was probably watching his carefully constructed world crumble. But for the first time in years, I felt strong, certain. "Miss Harvey," a reporter called out, "what do you have to say about your brother's arrest?" I kept walking, Jolie's hand tight in mine, Sullivan at our backs. We had truth to deliver and justice to serve. The time for hiding was over. The law office buzzed with activity as Thomas's team pored over the documents. Dad sat across from me, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Jolie had just finished giving her statement to the investigators. "I should have seen it," Dad said, rubbing his temples. "All those times he insisted on handling the finances himself." "He fooled everyone," I said, but Dad shook his head. "Not everyone. Your grandmother tried to warn me. So did you." He reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry I didn't listen." The door opened and Thomas entered with 2 police detectives. "We have a situation," he announced. "Riker just emptied several accounts before we could freeze them. He's trying to leave the country." "What?" Dad stood up. "How much did he take?" "Nearly 10 million, one detective said. "We've alerted airport security, but—" My phone rang. "Sullivan." "Turn on the news," he said without preamble. "Now." I grabbed the remote for Thomas's office TV. The headline made my heart stop. "Harvey Hotels. Heir holds wife hostage at family estate." The camera showed our family mansion surrounded by police cars. Riker's voice came through in a phone interview. "I want safe passage out of the country, or everyone learns exactly how deep the corruption in this family goes." "Oh, God," Jolie whispered. "He's in my old office. That's where I kept my backup files." "What backup files?" Thomas asked sharply. "Everything about his schemes, but also other things. Things about the family that he told me in confidence. Scandals he was saving as leverage." Dad's face went white. "The merger scandal from '95. "Among others," Jolie said. "I'm so sorry. I kept records of everything as insurance." My phone buzzed again. "Grandmother." "Don't let your father do anything rash. On my way with a solution." "We need to end this now," Dad said, reaching for his coat. "I'll talk to him." "No." I blocked his path. "That's exactly what he wants. More family secrets to exploit." The detective's radio crackled. "Suspect is demanding to speak with his sister. Says he'll only negotiate with her." Everyone turned to look at me. Sullivan, who had just arrived, stepped forward. "No way, it's too dangerous." "I have to," I said, "but I have an idea." I turned to Jolie. "Where exactly in your office did you keep those files?" "Bottom drawer of the oak desk, hidden compartment. Why?" I smiled grimly. "Because while Riker was busy learning the family business, I was the one who spent summers exploring that house. I know every secret passage, including the one that leads right under that office." "Absolutely not," Dad protested, but Thomas was already nodding. "We can work with this. Get SWAT in position while she keeps him talking." The next hour was a blur of tactical planning. I wore a wire as Sullivan drove me to the mansion. Police cars lined the street, lights flashing silently. "Be careful in there," Sullivan said, gripping my hand. "He's desperate." "That makes 2 of us." The negotiator handed me a phone. Riker answered on the first ring. "Come alone through the front door," he ordered. "Any tricks, and everyone learns just how dirty this family's money really is. I entered slowly, hands raised. Riker stood in the office doorway, looking wild-eyed. A gun trembled in his hand. "Just you and me now, sis," he said. "Like old times." "Let's talk," I said, moving into the office. Through the window, I could see police snipers taking position. I just needed to keep him distracted for 5 more minutes. "Nothing to talk about," he spat. "You ruined everything. You and that treacherous bitch I married. You did this to yourself, Riker. The fraud, the blackmail, the threats. I did what I had to do. This family never appreciated me, always comparing me to you. Perfect Monica, so honest, so principled." A slight scratching sound came from behind the desk, right on schedule. "It's not too late," I said, taking a step closer. "Turn yourself in, make it right." "Make it right?" He laughed manically. "I'm going to burn it all down, starting with these." He moved toward the desk drawer. The hidden panel behind him burst open. 2 SWAT officers tackled him as the gun clattered to the floor. More police poured in through the door. "No," Riker screamed as they cuffed him. "You don't understand. I had to do it. The family legacy is safe," Grandmother said, entering regally. "No thanks to you." As they led Riker away, Dad pulled me into a fierce hug. "Don't ever do anything like that again." "No promises," I said, watching my brother's retreating form. "Some things are worth fighting for." Outside, Sullivan waited with Jolie. The morning sun was rising over the mansion, casting long shadows across the lawn. An era was ending, but maybe, just maybe, something better was beginning. 1 week after Riker's arrest, we gathered in Grandmother's office for an emergency board meeting. The room was packed with lawyers, executives, and family members. Jolie sat beside me, her annulment papers freshly signed. "The press is having a field day," Thomas said, spreading newspapers across the conference table. Headlines screamed about scandal and betrayal. "We need to address this head-on." "I agree," Grandmother said, standing at the head of the table. "Which is why I've called everyone here. It's time for changes." She nodded to her assistant, who distributed thick folders to everyone present. "These documents outline our new corporate structure," she continued. "Complete transparency, enhanced oversight, and—" She paused, smiling at me. "New leadership." Dad cleared his throat. "Mother, are you sure about this?" "Absolutely." She turned to address the room. "Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO. Monica will take my place, with Jolie heading our legal compliance department." The room erupted in murmurs. I sat frozen, feeling every eye turn to me. "With all due respect," one of the older board members spoke up, "Miss Harvey has no experience running a hotel chain." "No," Grandmother agreed. "But she has something more valuable, integrity, and she won't be alone." She gestured to Sullivan, who stood by the door. "Mr. Hart has agreed to join us as CFO, bringing his expertise in corporate restructuring." Sullivan stepped forward. "I've reviewed the books. With proper management and transparency, we can recover from this scandal stronger than ever." "The vote must be unanimous," Thomas reminded everyone. "As per company bylaws." I stood up, heart pounding, but voice steady. "I know many of you have doubts. You're wondering if I can handle this responsibility. But I've watched this company my whole life. I've seen its potential and its flaws. I'm not my brother. I don't want power for power's sake. I want to rebuild what he nearly destroyed." Jolie stood next to me. "I'll testify to everything Riker did, every scheme, every cover-up. Then I'll help create safeguards to ensure it never happens again." The boardroom fell silent. Grandmother picked up her gavel. "All in favor?" Hands rose slowly at first, then faster. Dad's went up last, his eyes shining with tears. "Unanimous," Grandmother declared, banging the gavel. "Congratulations, CEO Harvey." The next hour was a blur of signatures and handshakes. As the room cleared, Sullivan pulled me aside. "You ready for this?" "Ask me again in a year," I said, managing a shaky laugh. "Monica." Dad approached, looking uncertain. "I owe you an apology. Many apologies, actually. I was so focused on preserving the family legacy, I couldn't see who was really protecting it. We all made mistakes, I said, but we can fix them, together. A commotion outside drew our attention. Through the glass walls, we could see reporters gathering in the lobby. Your first challenge as CEO, grandmother said, straightening my jacket. Time to face the press. Jolie handed me a folder. The statement we prepared. But maybe speak from the heart instead. I took a deep breath and walked to the elevator, Sullivan and Jolie flanking me. The doors opened to camera flashes and shouted questions. Miss Harvey, how do you respond to accusations that your brother's actions indicate systemic corruption? What changes can we expect under your leadership? I stepped up to the microphones, feeling the weight of generations of Harvey business leaders behind me. Today marks a new chapter for our company, I began. One built on transparency, accountability, and trust. My brother betrayed those values, but his actions don't define us. What defines us is how we move forward. More questions flew, but one cut through the noise. How can the public trust another Harvey after what happened? Because I'm not just another Harvey, I said firmly. I'm the Harvey who helped expose the truth, the Harvey who chose integrity over power, and I'm the Harvey who promises you this. Every decision I make will be in the light, every action open to scrutiny. Sullivan squeezed my shoulder supportively as cameras flashed. Now, I continued, I'll take your questions. All of them, because that's how we rebuild trust, one honest answer at a time. As reporters raised their hands, I caught grandmother's proud smile from across the lobby. Dad stood beside her, nodding encouragingly. Jolie was already taking notes, preparing for the work ahead. This wasn't the family drama I'd expected when I received that wedding invitation. But maybe it was the one we needed, a chance to tear down the old facades and build something real in their place. First question, I said, pointing to a reporter. Let's begin. The autumn breeze rustled through the courtyard as I unlocked the heavy doors of the Harvey Hotel's main entrance. Dawn was just breaking, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. These quiet moments before the day began had become my favorite part of being CEO. You're here early, Sullivan said, appearing with 2 coffee cups. He handed me one and fell into step beside me. Couldn't sleep. Today's the day. We rode the elevator to the top floor, where Jolie was already waiting. Legal documents spread across the conference table. Everything's ready, she said, looking up. The prosecutor called. Riker's taking the plea deal. I sank into a chair, emotions swirling. How long? 8 years minimum, plus full restitution. She pushed a newspaper across the table. But that's not why I called you both here so early. Look at this. The headline read, Harvey Hotels, named Most Transparent Corporation of the Year. Below was a photo of our leadership team, me, Sullivan, Jolie, and grandmother, at the opening of our newest location. Your grandmother's going to be insufferably proud, Sullivan said, grinning. Speaking of, Jolie nodded toward the door where grandmother stood, Dad beside her. I thought I might find you all here, grandmother said, entering regally. Big day. I just got off the phone with the prison, Dad said quietly. Riker wants to see you, Monica, before he signs the plea. The room fell silent. I felt Sullivan tense beside me. You don't have to go, he said. Yes, I do. I stood up. This needs to end properly. The prison visiting room was cold and sterile. Riker sat behind the glass, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame. He looked smaller somehow, less threatening. Hello, sister, he said as I sat down. Come to gloat? No, I came to listen. He laughed bitterly. To what? My apology? My excuses? To whatever you need to say before you sign that plea. His facade cracked slightly. I saw the papers. Company's doing well under your leadership. It is. I never thought. He paused, struggling. You were always the good one, the honest one. I hated that about you, but now I understand why grandmother chose you. She didn't choose me, Riker. I chose to be trustworthy. You could have too. Too late for that now. He picked up the plea papers. 8 years is a long time. Use it well, I said, standing. Goodbye, brother. Back at the hotel, I found everyone in my office. Sullivan had ordered breakfast, and Jolie was showing Dad how to use the new transparency reporting software. How did it go? Grandmother asked softly. He signed the plea. I picked up a pastry. It's over. Not over, she corrected. Just beginning. The board approved your proposal for the charitable foundation. The one using recovered funds to help victims of corporate fraud? Dad asked. Brilliant idea. Actually, I said, that was Jolie's idea. Jolie blushed. Well, after experiencing it firsthand. Speaking of ideas, Sullivan interrupted, pulling out his tablet. Wait until you see the designs for the new employee profit-sharing program. As they launched into an animated discussion about the future, I walked to the window. Below, the city was coming alive. Hotel guests streamed through the lobby. Employees greeted each other. Life moved forward. My phone buzzed, a text from Thomas. Plea officially filed. It's done. Monica, Sullivan appeared at my side. Everyone's waiting. We have that meeting about expanding the educational scholarship program. I turned back to my family. Not just blood relatives, but the family we'd chosen and built. Dad arguing good-naturedly with Jolie about legal terminology. Grandmother pretending not to be proud of everything we'd accomplished. Sullivan, steady and supportive as always. Before we start, I said, getting their attention, I want to thank you all. A few months ago, I thought I'd lost everything. My best friend, my brother, my place in this family. Instead, I found something better, something real. Oh, darling, Grandmother said, you never lost your place. You just needed to claim it. And now that you have, Dad added, the company's stronger than ever. To new beginnings, Jolie proposed, raising her coffee cup. To family, Sullivan added, the kind you choose. To truth, I finished, joining their toast. Outside my office, phones rang and employees bustled. There were meetings to attend, decisions to make, a legacy to rebuild. But in that moment, surrounded by people I trusted, I knew we'd face it all together. Not as the broken family from that wedding day, but as something stronger, a family forged by truth, tested by fire, and finally whole.
I remember that day as if it were yesterday. A basketball game was being played in the high school gymnasium. After the game, I was sitting alone in the bleachers reading a book when Dennis appeared before me. He was the star of the basketball team and always popular. Yet, at that moment, he chose to speak to me. Ariana, I often see you reading here. What are you reading? My heart skipped a beat at Dennis's smile. It's Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. What about you? When I answered, he gave me a warm smile. Me? I'm not really interested in much besides basketball. But is that book interesting? From that day on, we gradually grew closer, and I started attending all his games. He, in turn, became interested in my love of reading, and we spent more time discussing books. After graduating high school, we naturally started dating. A few years later, we got married. The ceremony was held in a small church, blessed by our family and friends. The happiness of that day remains deeply etched in my heart. I love you, Ariana, Dennis said, embracing me after the ceremony. Our married life was peaceful. I worked as a librarian, while Dennis built his career as an engineer at a local factory. We supported each other's dreams and grew together. Then our son, Ethan, was born. His birth brought even more light to our lives. Ethan was the embodiment of our love and our hope for the future. Every time we saw his smile, we felt blessed. Mama, Papa. When Ethan spoke his first words, we cried tears of joy. Each time he gripped our hands with his tiny fingers, our joy in watching him grow increased. Our family bonds deepened, and we spent our days as a unified team. Picnics in the park, weekend camping trips, decorating for Christmas, all these moments became precious memories etched in our hearts. Ethan was an energetic, curious child. His smile was as bright as the sun, and his presence illuminated our world. We cherished each day as we watched him grow. However, in the midst of such happiness, we were about to face an unimaginable tragedy. It was an ordinary weekday. I had gone to pick up Ethan from kindergarten, and we were walking home hand in hand as usual. That day, Ethan was particularly cheerful, singing as he walked. "Mama, I played a lot in the park today. The teacher pushed me on the swing." "That's wonderful, Ethan. What would you like for dinner?" "Spaghetti would be great." We were having this simple conversation when it happened. Suddenly, the screech of car brakes pierced the air. Before I could turn around, Ethan's hand had slipped from mine. It took me several seconds to comprehend what had happened. A car had jumped the curb and struck Ethan. I screamed and rushed to him. He lay motionless, his eyes closed. "Ethan! Ethan!" I called his name repeatedly, but there was no response. Passers-by called for help, and the wait for the ambulance felt like an eternity. Ethan was rushed to the hospital and taken into surgery, but the doctor's expressions told me how serious it was. All I could do was pray. Dennis rushed to the hospital, and we held hands while waiting for news. Hours later, the doctor appeared and slowly shook his head. "I'm sorry. There was nothing we could do." Those words shattered our world. We couldn't accept the reality that Ethan was gone. His toys were still scattered in his room, and the silence without his voice only magnified our pain. Dennis and I sank into deep grief, finding it difficult even to comfort each other. "Why did this have to happen?" Dennis whispered through his tears. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. If only Mama had been more careful." I kept blaming myself. Many friends and family gathered for Ethan's funeral to mourn his short life. But no matter how many people shared our grief, nothing could fill the void in our hearts. The months that followed were like living in a world drained of color. Though Dennis and I tried to support each other, we each carried our grief alone. Every time we remembered Ethan's smile, a crushing pain gripped our hearts. While we never got used to life without Ethan, we gradually learned to face forward. We came to believe that living each day preciously was the greatest tribute we could pay to him. It was an event that would change our lives completely. 7 years had passed since Ethan's accident, and while the grief never disappeared, we were slowly reclaiming our daily routine. That morning, I was brewing coffee in the kitchen as usual. Sunlight streamed through the window, and everything seemed peaceful. However, this tranquility was about to be broken by an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang, and when I opened it, there stood a police officer in uniform. Surprise and anxiety welled up in my chest. "Are you Mrs. Ariana Brown?" one officer asked. "Yes, I am." "Has something happened?" I replied hesitantly. "We've arrested a young boy who was trying to break into your house. He claims to be your son." I caught my breath at those words. I tried to process their meaning, but couldn't understand why my son, who had died 7 years ago, would be mentioned now. There must be some mistake. "My son passed away 7 years ago," I replied with a trembling voice. The officer looked confused but said, "Even so, would you mind coming to the police station to verify?" Though confused, I quickly put on my coat and decided to go to the station. Fear and anxiety swirled in my heart, but I knew I had to go to understand what was happening. At the police station, I saw the boy. However, he wasn't Ethan. The boy appeared wounded and wore tattered clothes. "Who are you?" I asked instinctively. The boy responded fearfully in a small voice, "I'm Ezra. I was just hungry. I'm really sorry." The officer continued explaining, "This boy is looking for his family, and somehow knew your address." As I listened to Ezra's story, I realized he wasn't just a lost child or vagrant. His eyes reflected deep sadness and desperation, suggesting there was something more serious behind his situation. "Why did you come to my house?" I asked Ezra. I just wanted someone to help me," Ezra replied with tears in his eyes. At that moment, I sensed something of Ezra's circumstances and felt strongly that I couldn't abandon him. That night, I returned from the police station and told Dennis about the day's events, about Ezra, how he was mistaken for Ethan, and his tragic situation. However, Dennis's reaction was different from what I had expected. "Dennis, listen about the boy I met at the police station today," I began, sitting on the living room sofa and taking a deep breath. "His name is Ezra. He was caught trying to break into our house. From what I could see, it looks like he's being abused." Dennis picked up the TV remote, lowered the volume, and looked at me. "Ezra. And why exactly did he come here?" "I don't know." But the fear and sadness in his eyes were real. "I think we should try to help him somehow." "Ariana, this is beyond us. We should leave it to the police." There was coldness in Dennis's voice. "But he's not just some lost child or vagrant. He might be asking us for help." I pleaded desperately, remembering Ezra's tears. Dennis sighed deeply and looked away. "Even if you say that, there's nothing we can do." Something about his response troubled me. I felt there was something hidden behind Dennis's attitude. That night, I couldn't sleep in bed. Dennis was acting different than usual. His cold attitude and unnatural distance bothered me endlessly. We had overcome grief together, so why did he suddenly feel so distant? As the night wore on, I became increasingly anxious. I couldn't shake the feeling that Dennis was hiding something. Was he really just indifferent to Ezra? Or was there something deeper going on? "Dennis, are you really not concerned about Ezra at all?" I finally confronted him. He turned away in the darkness and answered shortly, "Ariana, let's go to sleep. We can think about this tomorrow." His words only increased my anxiety. When had Dennis started acting this way? I had no idea what he was thinking. I couldn't get Ezra out of my mind, tossing and turning all night. His sad eyes, trembling voice, and the fragments of his story were deeply etched in my heart. All night, I lay awake staring at Dennis's back, wondering what he was hiding. And I decided I needed to take action to find the answer. The next day, I received a call from the police station. Though filled with anxiety and tension, I went to the station to cooperate. There, more details about Ezra's situation were revealed. The police officer began speaking with a serious expression. "We've made progress in our investigation of Ezra. After looking into his background, it appears that Ezra is your husband's son." What? I couldn't believe my ears. What do you mean? Ezra's mother is a woman named Jessica, and Ezra is the child born between Jessica and your husband. It appears Jessica was abusing Ezra, which is why he ran away and came to you. In that moment, my heart froze cold. I couldn't believe that Dennis had been unfaithful, and that the child born from that relationship was suffering so terribly. When I returned home, I couldn't stop crying from the shock of learning the truth. I confronted Dennis, who was waiting in the living room, with a trembling voice. "Dennis, did you know about Ezra all along?" He avoided my eyes, and a heavy silence followed. Finally, he sighed deeply and answered in a low voice. "I knew. But there was nothing I could do." "Nothing you could do? When your son was being abused?" I shouted, shaking with anger. "Why did you hide this from me?" Dennis covered his face with a pained expression. "Jessica was a one-time mistake. But Ezra was born as a result. When Jessica said she would raise him, I couldn't say anything." Those words filled me with despair and anger. I couldn't forgive Dennis for lying to me, and for how that lie had caused such deep sorrow. "Ariana, please understand. I knew about Ezra's existence, but I never thought Jessica would be such a terrible mother. But now he's come to us. He's asking for help." I wiped my tears and strengthened my resolve. "We need to think about what we can do to save Ezra." Dennis nodded silently, but his eyes reflected deep regret and pain. "We vowed to do everything we could to help Ezra. But I sensed this would bring further trials to our relationship. I decided to welcome Ezra into our home. I tended to his wounds, provided warm meals, and tried my best to make him feel secure. Though Ezra was wary at first, he gradually began to open his heart. "Ezra, where were you before you came here?" I asked gently. After hesitating slightly, Ezra quietly answered, "I went to see my father. I wanted to ask for help. But..." At that moment, a cold reality pierced my heart. "You met Dennis." Ezra nodded and continued with tears in his eyes. "He just looked surprised to see me. But he rejected me. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong." I squeezed Ezra's hand, feeling his pain. "I see. Ezra, you haven't done anything wrong. Ezra broke down crying and buried his face in my chest. Seeing him like this strengthened my resolve to protect him. I decided to confront Dennis. The next morning at breakfast, I brought up Ezra's story. Dennis, Ezra told me yesterday. He went to see you, but you rejected him. Dennis's face contorted as he avoided my gaze. Ariana, I didn't know what to do at the time. But he's your son. We can't abandon him. I said firmly. Ariana, there's nothing I can do, Dennis replied in a dejected voice. Then I'll do it. It's our responsibility to protect Ezra, I said with determination. That day, Ezra continued to tell me the truth. He tearfully explained how lonely he had been and how desperately he had sought help. Mom would hit me every day and wouldn't give me food. I couldn't take it anymore, so I ran away. But I had nowhere to go. So you came to our house. My heart ached as I listened to Ezra's story. Yes. I asked Dad for help, but he. Ezra choked on his words. It's okay now, Ezra. I'll protect you from now on. I held him tightly. That night, as I watched Ezra sleeping, I kept thinking about what I could do to save him. There was still so much I could do to help shoulder his past and brighten his future. Regardless of what Dennis thought, I was determined to fight to protect Ezra. I was prepared to do everything possible to ease Ezra's suffering. The next day, we received word from the police. Evidence of Jessica's abuse had been gathered, and she would be arrested. I breathed a sigh of relief as I told Ezra the news. Ezra, Jessica can't hurt you anymore. She's going to be arrested, I said gently, looking into his eyes. Ezra smiled through his tears. Thank you, Ariana. I'm really grateful. That day, I prepared a new room for Ezra. I renovated part of Ethan's room to create a space for him. Welcoming Ezra into a room filled with Ethan's memories was a big decision for me. After Jessica's arrest, Dennis and I went to the police to hear the details. The evidence of Jessica's abuse of Ezra was beyond imagination. Seeing the evidence, we truly understood how much suffering Ezra had endured. From now on, let's prioritize Ezra's safety, I said to Dennis, and he nodded quietly. Ariana, it's your decision. I'll cooperate. Though there was still hesitation in Dennis's voice, I felt a glimmer of hope in his words. Life with Ezra was a new challenge for us. It would take time to heal the wounds in his heart. But having decided to protect and love him, I was prepared to walk that path. Our bonds as a family would be tested in the process of rebuilding. However, I believed that Ezra's presence would bring us new hope and purpose. For his sake, and for our own, I had no choice but to keep moving forward. Meanwhile, Dennis lost his job. His reputation at work had fallen, and when his affair and hidden child became public knowledge, he lost their trust. When I received this news, I was filled with complex emotions. Anger at his betrayal mixed with anxiety about our family's future. Ariana, how did things end up like this? Dennis collapsed onto the sofa, holding his head in his hands. "You reap what you sow, Dennis." I answered coldly, though deep sadness lay beneath my words. "Have you ever thought about how much suffering Ezra endured?" Dennis said nothing, just hanging his head. It was difficult to see any trace of the man I had once loved in his current state. Jessica's arrest became big news, and her past actions were revealed one after another. As evidence of abuse continued to surface, she faced a long prison sentence. However, this wouldn't heal Ezra's wounds. Jessica can't hurt Ezra anymore. But his emotional scars run deep. I whispered to myself as I watched Ezra sleeping. Meanwhile, Dennis and Jessica's debts came to light. They had both accumulated significant debt. One night, Dennis approached me with a serious expression. "Ariana, what should I do? I've lost my job, and the debts keep piling up." I answered calmly, "First, think about Ezra. Then, take responsibility for this situation. We have a lot to do." "Ariana, I'm truly sorry. I've done something shameful to you and Ethan." Dennis apologized with tears in his eyes. "I don't need apologies now. We can only move forward," I said, looking into his eyes. "Let's do what we need to do, for Ezra's sake and for our own." Dennis nodded slightly at these words. Though I wasn't sure if he could change, at least we were preparing to take another step forward. We began reviewing our finances and cutting expenses to start a new life with Ezra. We did everything we could to create an environment where Ezra could feel secure. And as I watched Ezra gradually opening his heart, a ray of hope shone into mine. We renewed our determination to walk this path together, dreaming of the day when his smile would fully return. I decided to begin the process of formally adopting Ezra. Welcoming him into our family as a legal member felt like the first step toward brightening our future. However, it wasn't going to be an easy journey. One day, we went to family court. We were there to have Ezra's adoption officially recognized. In court, Jessica claimed her parental rights, testing our resolve. Jessica cried in court, pleading for her rights as a mother. "I made mistakes. But I love Ezra. Please, let me have him back." Remembering all the abuse Ezra had suffered, I maintained my composure. "Jessica, think about what you did to Ezra. Think about how much he suffered. We can't forget that." The court proceedings continued for several weeks, during which Ezra spent anxious days. My heart ached thinking about the pressure his young heart was under. "Ariana, what happens if you lose in court?" Ezra asked nervously one evening. "Don't worry, Ezra. I will protect you no matter what. You're not alone anymore." I squeezed his hand reassuringly. Finally, Judgment Day arrived. In the quiet courtroom, the judge addressed us, after considering all evidence and testimony, and in the best interest of Ezra, I hereby grant Ariana Brown formal adoption rights as Ezra's mother. At that moment, tears welled up in my eyes. Ezra's face showed relief. His small hand gripped mine tightly as he whispered, "Thank you." As we left the courthouse, we took our first step as a new family. Ezra was no longer alone, and we vowed to love and protect him. Though Jessica showed disappointment and frustration at the court's decision, I was confident we had made the best choice for Ezra. While we would face many challenges ahead, we renewed our commitment to moving forward as a family. Day by day, Ezra began to overcome his emotional wounds. As his smiles increased, brightness seemed to return to our home. Watching his growth became my greatest joy. One morning, Ezra rushed to me before heading to school. "Mom, today we're doing a science experiment with friends at school. I'm so excited." "That's wonderful, Ezra. You're going to have a great day." I felt warmth in my heart seeing his smile. When he returned from school, he eagerly shared the day's events. "Today the experiment went well. Everyone praised me." "You worked hard, Ezra." I praised him and shared in his small victory. As Ezra opened up to me more, our bond grew stronger. During dinner time, we all laughed together more often while listening to his daily adventures. "I played soccer with my classmates today. I made new friends too," Ezra said with a beaming smile. "That's wonderful. Time spent with friends is very precious," I responded, feeling his growth. Ezra's past wounds were healing gradually. His nightmares became less frequent, and he began sleeping more peacefully. One night, I entered his room and watched him sleeping soundly. "Ezra, you're such a strong child," I whispered in my heart, gently kissing his forehead. Ezra grew to trust me more, and our relationship strengthened with each passing day. His smiles and the sparkle in his eyes when he talked to me filled my heart with joy. "Mom, thank you. I'm really glad I came here," Ezra said one day, hugging me. "Me too, Ezra. I'm so happy you're here with us," I replied, gently rubbing his back. Together, we built our new life as a family, supporting each other along the way. Ezra's presence brought us new hope, and we vowed to keep growing together. Those days of overcoming past pain and walking toward a new future became our greatest treasure. Gazing at the snow dancing outside my window, I took a sip of warm chamomile tea. This January in Michigan was colder than usual, with thick ice clinging to the roads. "John, this winter is particularly cold, isn't it?" I spoke softly to my husband's photograph displayed above the living room fireplace. John, who passed away suddenly from a heart attack 2 years ago, still wore his gentle smile. We'd been together for 42 years since meeting at Michigan State University's College of Education. For 35 years, we taught at Kent County Public School together. He taught 4th grade while I handled 2nd grade, and sometimes we collaborated on extracurricular activities. During science fair season, we often stayed late helping students with their projects. His death came without warning. We had breakfast together as usual, and he left for school saying, "Looks like snow today." He never came back. When he collapsed in the teacher's lounge, it was already too late by the time the ambulance arrived. After his death, I retired from teaching. Now, I live alone in this suburban house. Oh, you should see how beautifully the cyclamen is blooming in the greenhouse this year. The greenhouse was John's last Christmas present to me. "Let's enjoy gardening together after retirement," he had said. That promise remained unfulfilled. Now, the greenhouse has become my special place for enjoying my daily gardening routine. My flowers have quite a reputation at the First Presbyterian Church's gardening club. Someone always comes to see the greenhouse after Wednesday Bible study. On the table sits a family photo taken last Christmas. It shows my daughter Jessica, my granddaughter Emily, and Jessica's husband Robert. Everyone looked so happy then. Jessica is 35. Although she attended the University of Michigan's College of Education like me, she ended up working at an accounting firm after graduation. After her divorce 3 years ago, she started working part-time at Food for Less. My daughter is kind and conscientious, but sometimes indecisive. Since childhood, she'd always needed help from John or me to resolve conflicts with friends. I felt relieved when she married Robert last year, who was a real estate company manager. Jessica and Robert met at a church charity bazaar. He was evaluating donated items while Jessica was working as a cashier. He was a manager at a well-known real estate company in the East Grand Rapids area and active in church activities. At the wedding, even the pastor blessed them, saying, "This is truly the birth of an ideal Christian family." My first impression of him was positive, especially how good he was with children. My 12-year-old granddaughter Emily beams in the photo. She's gifted in mathematics and even won first prize at last year's science fair with her project on renewable energy for home use. Like her grandfather's DNA at work, she has exceptional scientific talent. With her bright and energetic personality, she always enthusiastically shared stories about school during our weekend dinners. She's a key member of East Grand Rapids Middle School's math club and is expected to compete in next year's state competition. However, something has been wrong for about 3 months. Our traditional weekend dinners suddenly started getting canceled. The reasons varied: Robert working late, Emily's exam preparation, unexpected errands. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. They probably needed time to adjust as a new family. But the cancellations continued, and now I'm lucky if I see them once a month. Phone conversations feel different too. "Sorry, Mom. I can't talk right now." "Oh, Robert just got home." "Emily. She seems busy." There's always urgency in Jessica's voice. Conversations are brief and hastily ended. Our casual chats about everyday life have become rare. I can barely talk to Emily either. When she does come to the phone, her once cheerful voice is gone. She gives only brief, obligatory responses before passing the phone back. I heard from my former colleagues at school that her grades have been slipping. Maybe it's just taking time to adjust to the new environment. Though I tell myself this, a vague anxiety grows in my heart. The new environment after marriage. The relationship with Robert as a new father. Decreased contact from my daughter. And Emily's condition. A former colleague concerned about Emily at school had reported something worrying: Emily's been leaving most of her lunch uneaten lately. As the fireplace flames flickered quietly, Snow continued falling outside. Just as I reached for my coat to check on the greenhouse cyclamen, the phone rang. "Hello, Sarah Miller speaking." Thinking it might be about the First Presbyterian Church Bible Study Group, I picked up the receiver, but there was no response. Just faint breathing. Somehow familiar breathing. "Hello? Emily." The moment I called her name, the line went dead. An unfamiliar number. My anxiety grew stronger. 3 days after that suspicious call, I spent restless days. I called Jessica's house multiple times, but always got the answering machine. No response to my messages either. When I tried to check on them through church acquaintances, I only learned that they haven't been coming to worship services lately. Around 9 p.m. Friday night, I was parked at Food for Less. I usually avoid going out at night, but my refrigerator was empty. I needed bread and milk for tomorrow's breakfast, plus fertilizer for the greenhouse cyclamen. Due to the cold snap, the temperature had dropped, and fine ice crystals clung to the windshield. The parking lot lights reflected off these crystals, creating faint rainbow colors. At the store entrance, a young clerk in a red jacket was organizing shopping carts with nearly frozen hands. His breath turned to white smoke, dissolving in the cold night air. As the automatic doors opened, warm air and fluorescent lighting spread across the store interior. Food for Less was quieter than usual at this hour. Only 2 registers were open, with night shift employees busy restocking shelves. Nat King Cole's "Unforgettable" played softly through the speakers, occasionally interrupted by mechanical, customer service announcements. "Looks like the cold snap will continue tomorrow. Canned goods are on sale." A familiar elderly clerk greeted me at the entrance. I'm sure she was Jessica's colleague. But when I tried to ask about my daughter, she gave me a meaningful look for just a moment before hurrying away. On my way to the bread aisle, a middle-aged couple was checking discount stickers in the canned goods section. At the prepared foods counter, a man in security guard uniform was examining half-priced boxed meals. In the produce section, an employee in an apron was carefully removing spoiled vegetables. "I'll take this bread." Just as I picked up some rye bread for tomorrow's breakfast, catching a whiff of its fresh aroma. "Please." A faint voice came from behind me. When I turned around, there stood a thin girl. Her navy blue hoodie was clearly too thin to ward off the cold. There was a large stain on the collar, and the left elbow seam was coming undone. Her sneakers were worn at the toes, with shoelaces that had been retied many times. "I'm hungry," the girl continued in a trembling voice that seemed about to fade away. At the other end of the aisle, a middle-aged woman with a shopping cart glanced over and quickly passed by. The security guard near the registers seemed to be intentionally turning his back. In the candy aisle, an elementary school boy was begging his mother for something. The scene felt strangely surreal. Then, the fluorescent lights illuminated the girl's face. "Emily." My voice shook at the unbelievable sight. The person before me was undoubtedly my granddaughter. But she looked like a completely different person from 3 months ago. Her cheeks were sunken, with dark circles under her eyes. Her once glossy black hair had lost its shine, with split ends visible in places. Her lips were dry and cracked, with traces of blood visible. On her left arm, where the hoodie sleeve had rolled up, several purple bruises in the shape of fingerprints were visible. They clearly looked like marks from being grabbed forcefully. "Grandma." Emily's eyes widened. I could see her pupils trembling. The next moment, large tears spilled from her eyes. Under the fluorescent lights, they sparkled like small crystals. "Please, don't tell Mom." Desperately trying to suppress her voice, Emily wiped her tears with her t-shirt sleeve. The movement revealed fresh wounds on her neck. Her hands were shaking violently from cold and fear. Her fingertips were red and swollen from the cold. "It's all right, Emily. I'll take care of everything." I made an immediate decision. I returned all the groceries in my cart and got a new one. The cart wheels made a faint sound in the quiet store. "First, let's pick out your favorite foods. Bread, milk, cheese, ham, fruit, cereal." I kept adding Emily's favorite items to the cart. I remembered everything she had said she liked during our dinner gatherings. She just followed silently, but I could see her nose twitch slightly at the smell of the food section. The gesture reminded me of a small animal. On our way to the registers, I stopped at the women's clothing section. "You need this coat too. Your hoodie is much too thin for this weather." I picked up a warm down coat. The navy blue coat seemed to fit her perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her. She started to say something, but I gently shook my head. At the register, the elderly female clerk watched us with concern. However, she said nothing and just continued scanning items. When handling the payment, she only whispered, "Be careful," while handing me the receipt. "Stay at my house tonight." On the way to the parking lot, Emily wouldn't leave my shadow. She walked with trembling steps, occasionally looking back. When we stepped outside, she instinctively hunched her shoulders. The moment we got in the car, Emily let out a deep sigh. Her hands were shaking too much to fasten the seatbelt, so I helped her. Under the interior light, I checked my granddaughter's condition again. In just 3 months, Emily had become alarmingly thin. The sweater under her hoodie was clearly old, with loose threads visible in several places. I could see her shoulder bones protruding even through her clothes. "Let me turn up the heat." While adjusting the heater temperature, I checked the back seat through the rearview mirror. Emily was huddled small, clutching her new coat as if embracing it. She looked like someone afraid of being found. Every time the street lights illuminated her profile, deep fatigue was visible. "It's okay, Emily. You're safe now." As I started the engine, I had made up my mind. I would protect this child, no matter what. From the back seat, Emily's soft sleeping breaths had begun. An hour after arriving home, Emily was quietly sipping soup. Her hands gradually stopped shaking as she sat before the warm meal. On the kitchen table lay bread, ham, and cheese we'd bought at Food for Less. She occasionally glanced at the food as if afraid it might suddenly disappear. "Emily, there's more if you'd like some." When I pointed to the pot of chicken noodle soup, she shook her head slightly. But her eyes definitely followed the pot. Don't hold back. At my words, tears welled up in her eyes again. She put down her spoon and began speaking in a trembling voice. At home, we only get one meal a day. Those words made my heart freeze. Robert, my new dad, decided it. He says luxurious meals are unnecessary. Emily's voice was tiny, as if afraid of being overheard. No breakfast. I can eat lunch at school, but at night sometimes there's only bread and water. As she spoke, her eyes scanned every corner of the room, as if watching for Robert to suddenly appear. My allowance is gone too. Mom's salary. Robert controls all of it. Emily pulled a worn notebook from her uniform pocket. Inside were detailed records of meals in tiny handwriting. Every school lunch menu and even occasional snacks from teachers were meticulously noted. I have to report everything I eat every day. If I lie. She unconsciously rubbed the bruises on her left arm. They took away my phone. I only have an old one for school contact. But even that gets checked every day. Call logs, messages, everything. As she spoke, the words began flowing more freely, as if a long-sealed door of secrets had suddenly burst open. Mom, she's the same. Emily's voice shook. Her phone is monitored too. Every shopping receipt gets checked. If there's any unplanned spending. She swallowed her words. Mom's salary all goes to Robert's account. Her supermarket wages, her part-time pay. He says married couples should have one purse. I was beginning to understand why my daughter's calls had decreased. He made her close all her savings accounts. Said married couples share one wallet. Even my college savings. Emily's voice trailed off. She took another sip of soup and continued. Mom said she wanted to run away. But. Robert showed us pictures of his ex-wife. He said, you know what happened to that woman. A chill ran down my spine. Even if we try going to the police. Nobody will believe you, he says. I'm an exemplary real estate manager and church deacon. You're just a part-time employee. Emily's voice grew progressively quieter. When I tried telling a teacher at school, he threatened I'll destroy Emily's dreams of college. They weren't allowed to visit food banks or ask neighbors for help. The daily reality of mother and daughter under complete surveillance was gradually becoming clear. Today, Mom had night shift and Robert was out drinking with friends, so I finally got to go outside. Looking at the bread on the table, Emily added. For the first time in so long. I can eat until I'm full. I stood up and hugged Emily. I could feel her bones protruding through her back. Everything will be all right now, Emily. I promise I'll protect you. Emily's small body trembled in response to the embrace. Outside the kitchen window, snow continued falling silently. This house felt like the only safe haven right now. However, there was still something I couldn't understand. Why was Jessica enduring such a situation? What had driven her to such extremes? While gently stroking Emily's hair, I had made my decision. To change this situation, we first needed evidence. And we needed to find appropriate support. Get some rest. I'll prepare a comfortable place for you to sleep. While making up the guest room bed, I organized my next steps in my head. Tomorrow is Saturday. First, I need to contact people I can trust. After Emily fell asleep, I sat by the fireplace and opened my old address book. Inside were contacts built over 35 years of teaching, child welfare specialists, DV shelter volunteers, trusted lawyers. Outside, the snow was getting deeper. On this cold winter night, preparations for a quiet battle were beginning. The night I took Emily in, my first thought was to contact my daughter. However, as I reached for the phone, Emily's pleading words came back to me. Please, don't tell Mom. My 35 years of teaching experience raised a warning flag. I had seen many times how directly contacting victims in DV cases could lead to the worst outcomes. The fact that Robert monitored Jessica's phone. The implied violence toward his ex-wife. Hasty action could put mother and daughter in even greater danger. I need to consult professionals first. The next morning, Emily was still sleeping in the guest room. Though she had been troubled by nightmares throughout the night, she was now breathing peacefully. While preparing breakfast, I called my old colleague, Mary Thompson. Sarah, I understand. I'll head to the school right away. Even though it's Saturday, I should be able to get Emily's teacher Jane to come in. Mary and I go back 30 years. My former colleague at Kent County Public School and now watches over students as vice principal at East Grand Rapids Middle School. You haven't contacted Jessica yet? No. According to Emily, Robert monitors her every move. Yes, we need to approach this carefully. An hour later, we faced each other in an empty classroom. Emily's teacher Jane Walker sighed while spreading out student guidance files. I had noticed something was wrong lately. Especially during lunchtime. Jane continued while checking her notes. The records from the past 3 months showed alarming changes. Weight loss of 18 pounds since December. Gets out of breath quickly in PE class. During lunch, she just eats silently without talking to friends. Sometimes I've seen her putting bread in her pockets. Reports from other teachers too. Mary opened another file. The math teacher reported that Emily, once energetic, now fell asleep in class. The art teacher noted how her drawings had suddenly turned dark. The school counselor's report is decisive. Sarah Parker's detailed records, sudden grade drops, weight loss in PE class, and concerning statements. I don't want to go home. I can't concentrate because I'm hungry. My new dad scares me. Everything pointed to abuse. But why didn't we notice sooner? Regret tinged Jane's voice. Robert was exemplary at parent-teacher conferences. He showed genuine concern about Emily's falling grades, seriously saying, "We need to be stricter." That's how abusers operate. From my experience in education, I understood. Perpetrators are often skilled at maintaining appearances. We don't have enough evidence for the police yet. But Mary's next words offered hope. I'll contact YWCA West Central Michigan. They're experts in DV victim support, especially in cases of financial abuse. On Sunday, YWCA social worker Patricia Brown visited my home. Emily tearfully gave her testimony, and photos were taken of her injuries and bruises. This shows a clear pattern of abuse. Patricia efficiently organized the evidence while explaining. Let's request cooperation from Food 4 Less too. Jessica's work records, salary payment details, security camera footage, all of it will be important evidence. The plan progressed steadily. Food 4 Less manager Mike Wilson immediately offered to help. We'd been concerned both about the changes in Jessica's behavior and that man coming to collect her wages. Security cameras had recorded Robert collecting Jessica's wages every Friday. Clear fear was visible in her expression. First Presbyterian Church records too. At Patricia's suggestion, new evidence was added. The church accountant hesitantly disclosed records. Robert's donations matched Jessica's salary almost exactly. They also found records from his previous church, containing references to his relationship with his ex-wife. 2 weeks later, this evidence was submitted to the Grand Rapids Police Department. Detective Sarah Johnson, with 20 years of experience handling DV cases, immediately understood the gravity of the situation. Financial control, physical abuse, and psychological violence. We'll treat this as a serious case. That weekend, we carefully approached Jessica. After Food 4 Less closed, with the manager's help, we met her in a security camera blind spot. Mom. Emily is. She's safe, Jessica. Everything will be all right now. While embracing my tearful daughter, I explained our evidence gathering and future plans. Tuesday morning, Robert was arrested at his real estate office. What? This is ridiculous. Robert's face, contorted with rage, was unrecognizable from his usually mild-mannered expression. His eyes blazed with violence as he tried to shake off the officer's grip on his expensive suit collar. I'm an exemplary citizen. A church deacon and successful businessman. Who wouldn't believe my word? But Detective Johnson remained calm. Then how do you explain this evidence? When confronted with security footage and bank records, Robert's expression froze momentarily. Jessica. This is your doing. He shouted in a voice trembling with anger. I'll never forgive this. When I get out. His words were cut off by the sound of handcuffs. The surrounding office workers stood stunned at their respected superior's transformation. Jessica and Emily's safety was legally guaranteed. Events moved quickly after that. His ex-wife took the stand and testified about similar abuse. In court, Robert was like a different person. As prosecution evidence mounted, he became increasingly cornered. This is all a misunderstanding. He tried maintaining his gentlemanly demeanor at first, but when his ex-wife took the stand, that mask completely fell away. The defendant subjected me to similar financial control, and ultimately lies. Robert suddenly stood up, throwing the courtroom into chaos. You're trying to destroy my life. Jessica, Emily, I'll definitely. His shouts echoed through the courtroom as the judge's gavel rang out. It was the moment a controller lost his power, revealing his true nature that had been hidden for years. Restrained by court officers, he no longer resembled the dignified real estate manager, but merely a violent abuser. Church records, security footage, school reports, all evidence clearly showed his guilt. The defendant is sentenced to 7 years in prison. When the judge's words rang out, Jessica and Emily clasped hands tightly. By spring, as the snow began melting, new flowers were blooming in my greenhouse. Jessica had found work at a local accounting firm, and Emily's grades were rapidly improving. Grandma, look! While working in the greenhouse soil, Emily pointed to new sprouts. Her profile showed no trace of the fear I'd seen that night at Food for Less. This flower will bloom beautifully. Mother and daughter smiled gently at my words. Spring sunlight filled the greenhouse. Like new life sprouting, their lives were surely beginning anew. 3 months after Robert's trial, on a June morning, my kitchen was filled with long-absent vitality. Emily, how many more pancakes would you like? 2 more. Emily reached for the maple syrup with a bright smile. Her once gaunt cheeks now had a healthy fullness, and the dark circles under her eyes had vanished. Her school uniform skirt had recently needed replacing with a new size, showing how well her body was recovering. Mom, 1 is enough for me. I need to get to work. Jessica hurriedly checked the time. Since last month, she had started working full-time at a major local accounting firm. Gone was any trace of the part-time employee. She looked dignified in her navy business suit. There's still time. But today's the deadline for financial reports. Then laughter echoed through the kitchen. Mother and daughter seemed to sense something nostalgic in their conversation. Since that day, we've lived under the same roof. There was awkwardness at first. But these casual morning conversations gradually healed our hearts. Grandma, look! Emily pulled out a school test. The math test bore a large red circle and excellent. Her former talent was definitely returning. That's wonderful. In science club, I get to compete in next month's state competition. Emily's eyes sparkled. Using knowledge learned from First Presbyterian Church's gardening club, she had proposed a project on urban rooftop greening. We had many others supporting us too. The church community helped Jessica find her new job. Former colleagues from Food for Less sometimes bring homemade meals. Emily's teacher Jane volunteered to provide after-school tutoring. Mom, remember? Jessica pointed outside the window. There, roses were in full bloom. When we planted those roses, it was the day you and your father decided to get married. 35 years ago, John and Jessica planted those rose bushes together. That memory now held new meaning. We finally made it back home. Small tears glistened in Jessica's eyes. Is it too late to say I'm home? No. I embraced my daughter. Welcome home. Emily joined us in a three-way hug. Morning light streamed through the kitchen window. New flowers bloomed proudly in the greenhouse, and the garden roses swayed gently in the breeze. Through the trial process, we learned many things. The reality of financial abuse, the importance of support, and above all, the preciousness of family bonds. Oh, that reminds me. Emily suddenly spoke up. I decided to volunteer at the church bazaar this Sunday. At the DV victim support booth. We quietly nodded at her determination. Painful experiences were transforming into strength to help others. Have a good day. Watching mother and daughter leave, I savored our happiness. Like the roses blooming in the garden, our lives were finally regaining their true colors. Jessica and Emily walked down the school route in the morning light. Their retreating figures no longer showed fear. Watch over us, John. I whispered to my husband's photograph. The people you cherished have found happiness again. A warm June breeze carried the scent of roses, announcing the beginning of a new season. I sat in my chair by the window, quietly sipping my coffee while gazing at the marigolds blooming in my garden. This autumn feels unusually chilly. Here in suburban Minnesota, mornings are already touched with glistening frost. I'm Beverly Anderson, a retired elementary school teacher who dedicated 30 years to the profession before stepping down 3 years ago. Now at 63, my only worry is my daughter, Emily. 7 years ago, Emily married Michael Walker, the owner of Walker's Electronics, a local appliance store. These days, she juggles a part-time office job while raising her son, Tommy. Tommy has always been a bright and energetic 7-year-old boy, at least until recently. Over the past few weeks, something about him has begun to change. In the early days of their marriage, Michael was a wonderful husband and father. The store was doing well, and he was known in the community as a promising young businessman. Lately, though, that warm smile of his has become increasingly rare. Michael's mother, Helen, a former nurse, lived quite comfortably and had even helped with the couple's mortgage. Initially, I thought of her as someone who understood us, an ally. Outside my window, red maple leaves are dancing to the ground. Halloween is next week. Houses along the street have already started displaying their jack-o'-lanterns. Who could have imagined that in this peaceful neighborhood, such an incident would unfold? I'm coming to your place with Tommy. Don't worry. That Sunday morning, I kept rereading Emily's message as I paused my gardening. The autumn air stung my skin. Maple leaves drifted onto the marigold bed I'd just tended. What should have been a peaceful Sunday morning had set off alarm bells in my heart. Something was off about my daughter's message. Emily would always call, not text. As I pulled off my gardening gloves, I quickly sent a reply. Are you home right now? No response. In the distance, church bells rang 9 times. The sound of Sunday service beginning seemed unusually ominous this morning. I watched families walking down the street, and the sight of a young boy holding his father's hand reminded me of Tommy. Come to think of it, the strange events had started on Thursday. During our usual meetup at Caribou Coffee, Emily had seemed different. Sitting by the window, fidgeting with her latte, she'd started hesitantly. "Mom, I need to talk to you." Her voice lacked its usual brightness. Emily kept fidgeting with her fingers as she carefully chose her words. The sound of the barista grinding coffee beans echoed through the cafe. Usually a comforting background noise, today it felt jarring. "Michael's been acting strange lately. The store isn't doing well. He says they're losing customers to online shops." Her hands were trembling slightly. When I reached out to touch them, she gently pulled away. "But that's not all. Helen's been coming to our house almost every day." She lowered her voice. "She seems to disapprove of everything, my cooking, my cleaning, how I'm raising Tommy. And Michael just agrees with everything she says." Just then, Emily's phone rang. Helen's name appeared on the screen. She hurriedly answered and stood up. "I need to take Tommy to his activities." "I'm sorry." The coffee cup was still half full. On the surface of the abandoned latte, anxious swirls remained. I never imagined that would be our last normal conversation. The next day, I received a call from Mrs. Smith, Tommy's teacher at Lincoln Elementary School. "Mrs. Anderson, Tommy hasn't been to school all week. I've been trying to contact Mrs. Walker." Worry seeped through her voice. "I've been concerned about Tommy lately. His drawings during art time have become somewhat dark." As I processed this disturbing news, another call came in. It was Helen. "Beverly, there's no need for concern. Tommy needs proper discipline right now. It's part of his home education." Helen's voice on the other end was unnaturally cheerful. Before I could respond, she continued, "Children these days are too coddled. Things were different in our time. Discipline and manners are essential. Michael agrees with me." That night, I called Emily repeatedly. There was no answer, and I could only leave voicemail messages. My anxiety continued into the next day. When I called Walker's Electronics on Saturday afternoon, Michael answered. "Oh, mother-in-law. Emily said she was going to your house. Something about an urgent matter." There was something off about his voice. It seemed strained. If she were coming to my house, she would have definitely called me. Plus, I was worried about Tommy missing school. In the evening, I received a call from Mrs. Peterson next door. "I heard noises from the Walker house last night," her voice trembled. "It sounded like someone was screaming. We wondered if we should call the police. But Helen said it was a family matter." And then came Sunday morning. The sudden message. My daughter's silence. I grabbed my car keys. It was a 10-minute drive to the Walker house. As I drove under the autumn-colored trees, I gripped the steering wheel with a prayer in my heart. At the intersection, the light turned red. During that pause, the anxiety in my chest continued to grow. Standing at their front door, I sensed an eerie silence. An unfamiliar large truck was parked in their two-car garage. Perhaps for transporting display appliances. I rang the doorbell, but there was no response. Emily. Tommy. When I gently pushed the door, it wasn't locked. The living room was empty. The kitchen too. The air felt frozen. Then I heard a faint sound. There was a large refrigerator placed in an unusual spot behind the kitchen. And from inside came a voice, "Grandma." My spine turned to ice. There was no mistaking Tommy's voice. As I stood frozen in front of the refrigerator, I heard the faint voice again. "Grandma, open it." The voice was trembling. It sounded thin, as if coming through ice. My hands shook. When I touched the door of the large refrigerator, the metal's coldness stung my fingertips. It must be a new display model. Walker's Electronics logo gleamed impersonally. I took a deep breath and slowly opened the door. Freezing air escaped from inside. In the bluish light of the interior lamp, two figures were huddled together. Tommy reached out to me, shivering. His small body in pajamas was trembling violently. Beside him, Emily sat exhausted. Her thin house clothes were inadequate against the cold, and her lips had turned purple. The interior thermometer showed 35 degrees Fahrenheit. "It's okay, I'll get you out right now." Just as I reached for Tommy, Emily's eyes widened and she let out a small scream. "Mom, behind you." I sensed someone's presence. When I turned around, I saw Michael. Though he wore his familiar navy cardigan, he looked like a different person. His usually gentle eyes were now vacant and wide. "Mother-in-law," a sinister smile crossed his lips. "You're interrupting an important lesson." His voice had completely lost its former warmth. It sounded mechanical, as if someone else were controlling him. The morning sun streaming through the entrance cast unnatural shadows on his face. His hands trembled, making the hem of his cardigan quiver. "Michael, why? Why?" He tilted his head. "Are you criticizing parents who care about their children's education? Isn't that what you believe in too?" Just then, footsteps echoed down the stairs. Click-clack, click-clack, as regular as a ticking clock. Helen appeared. Her pearl necklace gleaming, she approached with elegant poise, as if arriving for a Sunday morning tea party. "Ah, Beverly," she smiled. Beneath her perfect makeup, only her eyes showed an unusual glint. "I apologize for the early hour. But this is necessary educational guidance. As a nurse and a mother, I'm only doing what's best." I desperately tried to shield Emily and Tommy in the refrigerator with my body. Helen's gaze was cold as ice. Her eyes held an abnormal certainty. "Sometimes strictness is necessary in child rearing," she continued in a tone like she was lecturing a teacher. There was something almost intoxicated in her voice. "Emily lately has been lacking awareness as a housewife. Tommy's meals are irregular, his homework isn't properly monitored. Right, Michael?" Michael nodded mechanically, like a puppet controlled by his mother. Since yesterday evening, Emily began with a trembling voice. They've kept us in here. Silence. Helen's voice cut sharply through the air. Her cheeks twitched beneath her makeup. Don't you understand? This is for your own good. For Michael's good. For this family's good. I slowly took my smartphone from my pocket. The numbers 911 seemed to pulse like a heartbeat on the screen. My finger trembled as it moved toward the emergency call button. Don't move. Suddenly, Michael was holding a kitchen knife. The blade gleamed in the morning sun. His hand was shaking too. His eyes swirled with fear and confusion. Put the phone down, his voice resonated low. Like Mother says, this is a family matter. In the refrigerator, Tommy let out a sob. That sound triggered memories to flash through my mind, holding Tommy for the first time, Emily's wedding, Michael's smiling face as he helped customers in his store, and how they had gradually changed. The trembling small body. My daughter's pale face. Michael's vacant eyes. Helen's eerie smile. None of it seemed real. The cold air leaking from the refrigerator seemed to envelope this abnormal scene. I took a deep breath. The composure I'd developed over 30 years of teaching slowly returned. My experience handling student crises was becoming a source of strength. Indeed, I carefully chose my words. This is a family matter. While appearing to show my phone, I touched the screen. But instead of dialing, I pressed the record button. The red recording light blinked like a beacon of hope. That's exactly why we should keep a record, shouldn't we? Let's let the police hear your educational theory. Helen's expression hardened. Her face contorted beneath her perfect makeup. I'm calling the police now. I deliberately showed my smartphone. But first, Michael, put down the knife. You were a good father, weren't you? It's not too late. You don't have to obey your mother. Michael. Just as Helen reached for her son's arm, a siren wailed in the distance, getting closer. Mrs. Peterson had been in her garden when I drove out. She must have called the police after watching me leave with that worried expression. The police. The knife fell from Michael's hand. The sound shattered the frozen time. The fallen knife still quivered on the floor. In sync with its movement, the siren grew louder. What would the police understand? Helen's voice was cold as ice. About this family, about our educational principles. Her words were cut off by the sound of police car brakes. Car doors opening and closing. Multiple footsteps running toward the entrance. Open up. Police. Strong knocking echoed. Michael stared at the entrance, then looked up at Helen's face. His expression was anxious, like a small child. Helen moved quickly toward the kitchen. The sound of a drawer opening. Metal gleamed in the morning sun. Nobody move. She held another knife in her hand. The blade glinted in the morning light. I instinctively stood between her and Emily and Tommy. The cold from the refrigerator froze my back. "Helen, stop," my voice trembled. "That's enough." "Enough?" She gave a sad smile. "We haven't even begun. These children's education is just getting started." At that moment, the front door burst open with a loud bang, and several officers entered the living room with guns drawn. Detective O'Brien, our local officer, assessed the situation in an instant and called out to Helen. "Mrs. Helen Walker, put that knife on the floor." "This is a family matter." Helen gripped the knife tighter, slowly backing away. Tommy's sobs echoed. The next moment, as Helen tried to lunge toward us, the officers quickly subdued her, and the knife clattered to the floor. "Helen Walker, you're under arrest." The sound of handcuffs clicking. Another officer was guiding Michael to the wall. He followed submissively, like a puppet with cut strings. "Get the paramedics in here." At Detective O'Brien's command, paramedics rushed in. Orange blankets were gently draped over Emily and Tommy. "It's all right," I embraced Tommy's shivering body. "You're safe now." Outside the window, police lights were flashing. Neighbors were gathering in small groups. I spotted Mrs. Peterson among them and gave her a small nod. She returned the gesture with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Anderson, a paramedic, approached me. "They both show signs of mild hypothermia. We'd recommend a hospital examination just to be safe." Emily gripped my hand from the stretcher. Her fingers were still cold. "Mom. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner." "It's okay," I squeezed her hand gently. "You did nothing wrong." I watched as the paramedics carried Emily and Tommy to the ambulance. As I turned back, I caught one last glimpse. Helen was still shouting something as she was placed in a separate police car. Beside her, Michael trembled silently, head bowed. Mrs. Anderson, Detective O'Brien approached. "Your quick thinking prevented a major tragedy. The recording will be crucial evidence." I nodded silently, feeling a lump in my throat. The morning sun had risen high in the sky. Autumn leaves swayed in the breeze. Somewhere, church bells rang, marking the end of Sunday service. A neighbor's jack-o'-lantern cast strange shadows in the morning light. Halloween was next week. But for this family, perhaps the real nightmare was finally ending. I took a deep breath. A long journey was beginning. But hope was visible on the horizon. The ambulance siren echoed through the quiet neighborhood. 1 week after the incident, I sat in the waiting room at St. Mary's Hospital, waiting for visiting hours. Outside the window, maple leaves were falling. "Mrs. Anderson." I turned to find Dr. Thompson standing there. "Emily and Tommy are progressing well. While they'll need professional care for the trauma." I nodded slightly at her words. Just yesterday, I'd received a detailed report from the police. Helen Walker's past was gradually coming to light. 10 years ago, she had suddenly resigned from her hospital position. The reason: excessive intervention with patients, particularly her educational guidance of young mothers. Afterward, she had satisfied her desires by perfectly controlling her son Michael. Beverly. Michael walked down the hallway. Just released on bail after questioning in detention, he no longer had that vacant look, but rather showed deep remorse. "May I?" His voice trembled. "May I see Emily and Tommy?" Just then, the counseling room door opened. Mrs. Lewis, their counselor, smiled warmly. "Perfect timing. Tommy's been asking to see his daddy." Inside, Tommy was playing with building blocks. Emily sat quietly reading a book nearby. Tears welled up in Michael's eyes at the sight of his son. "Daddy!" Tommy ran to his father without hesitation. Michael embraced his small body, repeatedly apologizing. Emily closed her book, watching them quietly. "It will take time," she said slowly. "But I want to rebuild our family." Mrs. Lewis gently intervened. "There's no need to rush. Let's start with regular visits in a safe environment." True to her words, the family's healing progressed gradually. A month later, Emily and Tommy moved to a protective facility. Walker's Electronics temporarily closed, but the local business association offered support. Every Tuesday, we attend family counseling. According to Mrs. Lewis, Michael's liberation from control is progressing well. His mother Helen was committed to a psychiatric ward. The initial evaluation revealed serious controlling tendencies and perfectionism. "Grandma, look." 6 months later, at his birthday party in their new apartment, Tommy proudly showed me his drawing. The dark colors were gone, replaced by bright, vibrant hues across the paper. "That's beautiful," I stroked my grandson's head. "What is it?" "This is our new home, and this is the church, and this is Daddy's store," Tommy explained excitedly. "And this is..." His words were interrupted by the doorbell. It was Mrs. Peterson, bringing a homemade hot dish for the celebration. Behind her stood members of the church volunteer group. "The community's support has been amazing," Emily told me in the kitchen. "Everyone just being there, without saying anything." "Mom!" Tommy came running. "Dad's here." Michael was now allowed to see his son only on weekends. In his hands was a small birthday present, a carefully chosen picture book. "It will still take time," Mrs. Lewis had told us recently. "But you're all moving in the right direction." In the living room, Tommy's birthday song was playing. Candlelight warmly illuminated the faces of everyone gathered. The aroma of Mrs. Peterson's casserole filled the room. Outside the window, the street trees were preparing for winter. Next spring, new buds would sprout again. Our family too was slowly but surely moving toward a new season. There's no such thing as a perfect family. What matters is having hearts that care for each other, and the courage to ask for help when needed. Perhaps that small voice I heard from the refrigerator that morning was teaching us just that. I quietly closed my eyes. From the living room came the sound of Tommy's laughter. It rang out like the bells of hope. A cold wind swept through the Boston suburbs on a February morning. Martha Wilson walked with familiar steps toward the Victorian-style house in Newton's quiet residential area. At 7 a.m., the sky was still dim, and yesterday's snow lingered on the roads. The wind from Crystal Lake caressed her cheeks. She unlocked the front door and quietly entered the house. The rhythmic sound of a ventilator from upstairs told the story of the 8-year-old girl who lived there. "Good morning, Emily." As soon as she entered her granddaughter's room, Martha checked the ventilator display. The numbers shown on the LTV 1150 screen were like a second language to her, drawn from 30 years of nursing experience. Oxygen saturation, respiratory rate, tidal volume, she confirmed all readings were within normal range. Grandma Emily, who had been reading The Secret Garden in bed, responded cheerfully. With wisdom beyond her 8 years, she skillfully managed her ventilator tubes as she sat up. Her brown curls gleamed in the morning sun. "I finished all my math homework yesterday. I'm perfect at adding fractions now." "My, that's wonderful. Would you teach Grandma sometime?" As Martha smiled warmly, she heard movement in the hallway. "Oh, Martha. Would you mind if I rest a bit today? I'm so tired." Rachel, her son's wife, appeared in expensive silk pajamas. She had married David 5 years ago and had previously worked as a medical administrator at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Though she played the role of the perfect mother, lately she'd been showing signs of fatigue more frequently. "Of course, dear. I'll make breakfast. I'll take care of Emily's medication too." "Thanks. I'll get some more sleep then." Rachel elegantly brushed back her hair and returned to the bedroom. Watching her leave, Martha felt something wasn't quite right. Despite claiming exhaustion, her makeup was impeccable. While warming whole wheat bagels in the kitchen, Martha reflected on last week's events. When checking medical bills, Rachel had brushed off concerns about excessive medical supply charges, saying, "It's fine, insurance covers it." As she brewed organic coffee, Martha questioned her intuition. Her 30 years of experience as a pediatric nurse at Boston General Hospital was raising alarm bells. What also concerned her was Dr. Parker's demeanor during yesterday's regular checkup. "Mrs. Wilson, is there anything concerning you?" That question seemed to carry a different meaning, and the doctor's eyes showed unusual concern. Her son David remained caught up in work as always. As a sales manager at Boston Scientific, he spent half the month traveling to earn enough for his daughter's expensive treatments. After his marriage 5 years ago, he became even more of a workaholic. Last night too, he was seen working on paperwork until late. "Grandma, I have a video call science experiment today. We're learning about changes in water states." Emily's voice brought Martha back to reality. While mindful of the tubes, she enthusiastically shared her plans for the day. Martha nodded along while hurrying with breakfast preparations. Through the window, she could see magnolia buds heralding spring's arrival. "The teacher said that even kids like me who can't go to school can study with friends online now. I'm so excited." Emily's smile warmed Martha's heart. Despite her severe congenital lung condition, she never showed a gloomy face. Rather, she lived life to the fullest within her given circumstances. The bells of nearby Grace Episcopal Church struck 8. A new day was beginning. However, Martha didn't yet know that small cracks had already begun to appear in this peaceful morning routine. The bill amounts, Rachel's attitude, the doctor's words, they were all harbingers of events to come. The aroma of blue bottle coffee and toasted bagels filled the kitchen. Outside the window, she could faintly hear the siren of an ambulance heading to Newton Wellesley Hospital. As March arrived and the snow began to melt, an unsettling atmosphere started to permeate the house. As the ice on Crystal Lake gradually thawed and spring approached, Martha's sense of unease grew day by day. Particularly concerning was Rachel's attitude toward the caregiving staff. She who had previously given instructions with carefully chosen words now openly expressed dissatisfaction. How can you not understand something so simple? We're paying you a considerable amount. Rachel spoke harshly to the physical therapist who visited 3 times a week. Her voice must have carried to Emily's room upstairs. Martha frowned as she silently observed. Even more puzzling were the persistent inquiries to the insurance company. Yes, that's right. All these treatments should be covered by insurance. I used to be a medical administrator, so I know. While making coffee in the kitchen, Martha overheard Rachel talking to someone on her smartphone. Her tone was clearly different from usual, carrying a calculating edge. David, look at this. One night, Martha witnessed her son checking documents. He, usually focused solely on work, sometimes appeared to be recording conversations with his wife. His business trips increased, and he was away from home more often. New security cameras were installed one after another, and document storage methods changed. Monitoring of Emily's room, in particular, became more stringent. Small black lenses watched every corner of the room. This is for Emily's safety, Rachel explained, but the direction of the cameras seemed odd. They appeared to be focused on the ventilator. Mrs. Wilson, have you noticed any changes recently? Dr. Parker's questions became increasingly meaningful. In the examination room, the doctor slowly continued while gazing out the window. For instance, about medical equipment usage, or family dynamics. Martha's nursing instincts, honed over 30 years, grew increasingly anxious. Rachel had been making exaggerated reports about Emily's symptoms at the hospital more frequently. Emily had an attack in the middle of the night. It was really terrible. However, Martha, who watched over the night, had no recollection of such incidents. If anything, Emily's condition had been stable. Even at Whole Foods Market, Rachel's behavior was different from usual. She would stock up on excessive medical supplies, and when Martha said, "We should still have last month's inventory," she wouldn't listen, saying it was just in case. The atmosphere in the house gradually changed. A new filing cabinet with a lock was placed in the living room. A large safe was brought into David's study. "Hey, why am I getting less time to talk with my friends lately?" Emily's innocent question made Martha's heart ache. Indeed, online class time and video calls with friends had been restricted. "It's for your health, Emily." Rachel's explanation seemed superficial. As Easter preparations began at Grace Episcopal Church, Martha's concerns were turning into certainty. Amidst the blooming trees at Boston College, she had also noticed changes in her son David. Voices in the middle of the night, hushed phone conversations, and watchful glances toward his wife. Everything suggested something was about to happen. "Hey, Grandma." One day, Emily asked Martha. "Has Mom changed somehow? The way she looks at me, it's kind of scary." Those words made Martha's heart sink. Children's intuition is sometimes sharper than adults. Outside the window, dark clouds gathered, forecasting a spring storm. Martha was reviewing her nursing notebooks in her room. She checked past cases for similar incidents. Fraudulent insurance claims, suspicious accidents, sudden deterioration of conditions. With each turn of the page, her chest tightened. "What are you looking at?" Suddenly, Rachel's voice came from behind. Martha hurriedly closed the notebook. "Oh, just old records." Feeling nostalgic, Rachel left without a word, but her gaze clearly showed suspicion. That night, Martha couldn't sleep. Looking at the ceiling illuminated by moonlight through the window, she organized recent events. The high medical bills, increasing surveillance cameras, Rachel's unnatural behavior, and David's changes. The next morning, while selecting vegetables at the farmer's market, Mrs. Grace from next door approached her. "Mrs. Wilson, I've been concerned about your household lately. Especially your daughter-in-law." Her hesitation to complete the sentence made Martha realize that the changes in her home were visible from the outside. The community's eyes had surely noticed the changes. Amid the bustle of Patriots' Day preparations, the warning bells in Martha's heart rang louder. Her granddaughter's pleading gaze, her son's troubled expression, and Rachel's unfathomable smile. Everything felt like a countdown to disaster. One April morning, after finishing shopping at Whole Foods Market earlier than usual, Martha instinctively felt something was wrong. As she passed Newton Wellesley Hospital, an ambulance siren rang out. Martha's heart leaped. As she approached home, she noticed an unusual silence. Emily's usual chatter and the regular sound of the ventilator couldn't be heard. She unlocked the front door and rushed inside. As she was about to run up the stairs, she caught a glimpse of Rachel's shadow in the second-floor hallway. "Emily." No response. Martha held her breath as she headed to her granddaughter's room. The door was half open. At that moment, Martha saw Rachel holding the ventilator cord. Emily lay pale-faced on the bed. "Stop!" Martha's scream echoed through the room. But it was already late. The monitor screen flashed red warnings showing a rapid decline in heart rate. "Oh, Martha. You're back already." Rachel spoke as if having an everyday conversation. She still held the ventilator cord in her hand. "Call an ambulance." Martha's hands shook as she reached for her phone. However, before she could, Dr. Parker rushed into the room. Police officers were visible behind him. "Mrs. Wilson, we were prepared." The doctor immediately began CPR. Officers restrained Rachel and handcuffed her. "Now she'll be at peace," Rachel said with a smile. Her expression showed no trace of maternal love. "Emily, stay with us." Martha gripped her granddaughter's cold hand. Dr. Parker's efficient treatment. The arrival of paramedics. Everything passed like a dream. "Mom." David's expression, as he rushed in breathless, showed he understood everything. "I started investigating after noticing the abnormal increase in recent bills." Rachel had a record. Attempted insurance fraud in another state. David had been working closely with the police, gathering evidence. The newly installed security cameras were actually set up in cooperation with the police. The ventilator had been equipped with a special backup system. "We have a pulse." At Dr. Parker's announcement, everyone in the room breathed a sigh of relief. Color slowly returned to Emily's cheeks. Outside, the bells of Grace Episcopal Church were ringing. Magnolia flowers swayed their fully bloomed branches as the spring breeze blew through. "We have sufficient evidence," the officer informed Martha. Rachel maintained her composure as she was led to the police car. Her designer dress gleamed eerily in the morning sun. In the ambulance heading to Newton Wellesley Hospital, Martha continued holding Emily's hand. The siren echoed through the streets. Cherry blossoms along Boston College's walkways streamed past the ambulance windows. "Grandma." As Emily faintly opened her eyes, Martha smiled while holding back tears. "It's all right now, you're safe." At 10 a.m., spring lights sparkled on Crystal Lake's surface. On this peaceful spring morning, a nightmarish incident occurred. But it was also a new beginning. In the ambulance heading to the hospital, Martha reflected on recent events. Her nursing experience had indeed saved her family. She had noticed Rachel's changes, understood Dr. Parker's hints, and comprehended the meaning of her son's actions. But above all, it was her deep love for her granddaughter that had prevented the worst outcome. In the ambulance, David quietly began explaining. "Last night, we got the final evidence. There were clear signs of forgery in the documents Rachel sent to the insurance company. Dr. Parker had noticed too, and we were quietly preparing." The monitor showing Emily's heart rate beeped regularly in the vehicle. "But why today?" To Martha's question, David heaved a deep sigh. The insurance policy was nearing maturity. Fatigue was deeply etched in her son's profile as he struggled with words. Martha's intuition to hurry back from Whole Foods Market hadn't been wrong. Upon arriving at the hospital, reporters had already begun gathering. Attempted insurance fraud, attempted murder, this horrific incident in a quiet Boston suburb would soon become news. However, Martha's heart now held only one thing: the fact that Emily's life had been saved. The cherry blossom petals visible from the examination room window seemed like rays of hope. After a week of observation in Newton Wellesley Hospital's intensive care unit, Emily began showing signs of recovery. While the magnolia flowers visible through the window at Boston College had started to scatter, new green buds were becoming noticeable. "Good morning, Emily." Every morning when Martha entered the hospital room, her granddaughter would smile in response, still attached to the ventilator. While the memory of the incident seemed to be fading, she occasionally showed anxious expressions. "Mom isn't coming back." To that question, Martha gently squeezed her hand. "Mom has gone far away. But Dad and I will always be here with you." Rachel's trial had already begun. The evidence was clear. Records of past attempted insurance fraud, falsified medical records, and the decisive security camera footage. The prosecution indicated they would seek severe punishment. "I'm innocent. I was thinking of her welfare." Rachel's words in court froze the gallery. Her eyes showed no sign of remorse. Meanwhile, David was desperately working to rebuild. He adjusted his work at Boston Scientific, increasing his work-from-home time. Emily's nursing care system was also improved to be more comprehensive. "Mom, thank you so much." One night, David bowed deeply to Martha. "Your experience and intuition saved Emily." At those words, David's voice choked up. No, this was everyone's effort. Indeed, there had been support from many people. The Grace Episcopal Church community sent words of encouragement daily. Dr. Parker was advancing research on better treatment methods. Neighbors were offering whatever assistance they could. The hospital staff were particularly supportive. The network Martha had built during her 30-year nursing career was now proving to be a great source of support. "Mrs. Wilson, we'd like to consult with you about Emily's new treatment plan." Dr. Parker explained the new treatment plan with a hopeful expression. The latest ventilator system, more effective medication programs, and the introduction of breakthrough physical therapy. Everything was prepared for Emily's better future. "Grandma, look." In May, Emily was able to participate in online classes using a tablet from her hospital bed for the first time. On the screen, her classmates waved with smiling faces. "Everyone was waiting for me." At that moment, Martha felt tears welling up. 1 month after the incident, the life that was nearly lost was surely regaining its light. At Crystal Lake, spring waterfowl had already returned. Looking at this scene from the hospital room window, Martha reflected. Life sometimes brings unimaginable trials. However, with love and trust, they can always be overcome. "They say I can go home this Sunday." Emily's joyful voice filled the entire hospital room. The new ventilator was much more compact and easier to use than before. "Yes. Let's all welcome a new beginning." Martha gently stroked her granddaughter's hair while looking out the window. Newton's streetscape showed its usual peaceful view. However, for this family, everything was about to be reborn. "Thank you, Grandma." Martha nodded firmly at Emily's words. The warm May sunlight gently illuminated the hospital room. Along with the beginning of a new season, their story was about to take another step forward. Moreover, to prevent such tragedies from recurring, a review of the medical system had begun. Centered around Dr. Parker, strengthening the monitoring system for home medical care was being considered, and new measures to prevent insurance system loopholes were being discussed. The bells of Grace Episcopal Church quietly echoed through the town. It sounded like the chimes of new hope. On the day of discharge, former colleagues from Boston Children's Hospital came to celebrate. The bonds built over 30 years of nursing life remained warmly unchanged. Mrs. Wilson, your experience is becoming the foundation for new medical safety guidelines. The former head nurse, once her subordinate, announced. Learning from this incident, a review of monitoring systems in home medical care was progressing. From now on, we'll hold monthly community meetings to consult with families in similar situations. Housewives from the neighborhood, whom she met at Whole Foods Market, had also begun expanding new support networks. This sad incident had indeed moved people's hearts and become a step toward a better future. Come, Emily. Let's go to our new home. To Martha's words, her granddaughter responded with a beaming smile. The spring breeze gently opened the door to a future